my own video here. Let's say that I don't think that sometimes. I was starting off with technical difficulties. That's okay though. That's just the reality of working with tech. And okay, excellent. I think OBS might be agreeing with me now. Cool. Um, so this is just basically kind of the first in hopefully a series of doing some live coding about just kind of creating an open source software project. What's this, what's involved, what's everything in that. Um, so I suppose I should kind of define like what we're doing. And the kind of idea here is, I'm guessing some of you, at least part of you, have heard of Grafana. Grafana is kind of an open source observability platform. It has a million features. I used to work for them back in the day. Trying to actually recreate Grafana because that would be an insane amount of work and um, you know investment. But it's a cool place to start. And what we're getting, the reason we're going to be doing this is there are some architectural things that make Grafana a little bit difficult to work with in certain scenarios. So like in depending on your deployment scenario, depending on what you're doing, it could want something else. The interesting thing too is that the way Grafana is structured, it's a plugin based system. So you have plugins that get data and then take other plugins that take and display that data in various ways uh, with various charts and stuff like this. I'm guessing there's at least some of you have seen dashboards like this. They're pretty cool. If you want to see one in action, uh, Wikimedia has um, their Grafana stuff public, which is pretty cool. And so you can go over to it's grafana.wikimedia.org. Um, I suggest checking it out. Like I like to look the CDN front end network stuff for Wikipedia is just insane. I mean, yeah, good God. Um, Concurrent like 60 gig, gigabits per second of traffic, 40 to 60 gigabits of traffic, cumulatively across the world, which is significant to say the least. But this is the kind of thing that, if you're trying to look at something and do something um, pretty significant, then Grafana is not the only thing that can do this. There's Datadog, New Relic does portions of this. There's a whole bunch of projects out there. But we're just gonna go into it. And like I said, I did that like an Instagram post. This will probably be an absolute train wreck. Um, and so we'll just start throwing some things against the wall. But first things first. Uh, I'm on GitLab right now. The reason I'm using GitLab, as opposed to GitHub, which a lot of people do, is that GitLab is itself open source software. So um, trying to use, where possible, open source tools. The other nice thing about GitLab is that the DevOps stuff, basically being able to deploy stuff like that's really good. So that'll give us an advantage, potentially down the road as as we maybe actually get something that kind of works. We'll be able to deploy stuff. Okay, group name. I'm just going to call it Sabai. Um, so for those of you who don't know, I Thailand. We already got a Sabai group there. So we'll just do Sabai Sabai. Sabai Sabai is a Thai way of saying basically just like keep it chill. Um, so we're gonna keep it chill. This is gonna be a public group. I'm not gonna be hiding anything here. What we use this group for. Um, we're just gonna fill out all the marketing, company or team. Hopefully it's just for me at the moment, but hopefully we'll have a company or team or something. And also store my code. Especially get I guess let's just say I'm going to store my code. Um, not going to be inviting any other members, just going to be me for the moment. Okay, cool. We have a group. And so the way that GitLab is set up, you create a group, And then within that group, you can create code repositories. So let's do that new project. And we're just going to create a blank project. Just for the fun of this, I'm going to call this Hanuman. And this is getting into more Thai stuff living in Thailand. Um, if you go back, like the lineage of Grafana such, it was forked from a project ages ago called Kibana. Kibana itself is like kind of a little bit of a mistranslation of the Swahili for log hub because Kibana deals with logs. Uh, we're just gonna, and Grafana is like kind of named after the Swedish word for graph. So we're gonna do just Thai stuff for now. Keep it relevant to like where we're at. Um, we're not gonna do any deployment targets for the moment. Again, we're going to keep this public. I don't have any code at the moment, so going to just initialize with the README. That's fine. Cool. So let's create that. All right. Going to get the basics here. Just how to use Git. We won't be going into how to use Git too much or code management or stuff like that. That's a whole other thing in itself. This is more just if you have some level of experience, just getting off the ground. Who knows? I might do that in the future, but we'll see. We'll just kind of keep rolling with this. Going to clone. So and Git, of course, we want to uh, clone the code we're using. So we'll do that. Okay. So I'm using a terminal called Warp. Warp's pretty nice. And I think it might be, at least for a while, this macOS only, but I was just checking it out for anyone who was interested. It's not too bad. All right. Okay, and Git. I already have Git installed, so we're gonna do that. Really, this is just gonna give me a README file. So let me go and cool. And we got it. It works. Yay. That at least is good. The README file is there, which is get what's else there. README files there. That's a good thing so far. All right. Yes, the logo in the way. I'm just gonna go ahead and move that logo so it's not messing with our commands. Go. Oh, okay, here we go. Speaking of open source software, OBS is indeed really cool. Okay. Now with the logo out of the way, let's kind of keep going here. So I'm using a code editor called Zed. So just opening up the code. First things first, let's just get rid of the default stuff. Get into README. Okay. Software, which does observability type things using the plugin protocol. Okay, so just kind of defining a very general goal of what we're trying to do. We're probably going to be building this in Go. I'll explain why in a second. But I'm just kind of going from there. I mean, simple as that. And I don't even think we need to say more than that. Okay. Doing a bold first commit here. Yeah. Up to three. I can just do this. Check. Saves that file. Thankfully, always helps to have an editor with built-in Git support. I feel like for the most part, they kind of tend to anymore. I'm going to push this change. And again, this isn't really attempting to cover the specifics of Git. You could write a book on that. There are full books written on it. So for those who are curious, I suggest checking it out. All right. So we have a README. I'm gonna just check that it did actually push. Always good to see that, like when at least when you get started, that things are pushing and working as expected. Um, Indeed, it is. So we're good. We have we have a repository. It has a README. Now we don't have at the moment anything else. Okay. So why are we going to do this? We're probably going to get going with this and do this in language called Go. And the reason here is simple. It's just that um, Grafana itself is built in Go. Go has a number of nice properties otherwise. Number one, it's portable, which means you can just compile it, run it on any OS. The compilation times are pretty fast. So that just means that we can have a very quick development cycle. Languages like C++, Rust are great. They're very high speed. The downside is you're going to be sacrificing compile times and stuff like that. One of the purposes of Go is to have a bit better feedback cycle in terms of how fast stuff is. So we'll just use Go. For the front end, we'll probably use TypeScript, but we'll get into that later. The first thing, though, let's just get the Go code going. And so, yeah, I'm like terrible at, I always forget how to do a lot of this stuff, and I feel like most software engineers do this. There's a million languages, there's a million projects and tools. Um, I'm not too worried about um, being like super egotistical about this. So, creating a Go project, and you should use Golang when searching this. Um, so, and I'm pretty sure I already have Go installed. So, let me check though. On Mac, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Oh, actually, I don't have Go installed on this computer, so I'm just going to use Brew, Homebrew. Um, that tends to be the the quickest way for a lot of Mac-based development tools. Oh God, of course, there's a million things that have Go in the name. Brew info Go. I make sure this is actually okay. So, yes, it is. Go is the package you want. So if you're using Homebrew, Go is, as it turns out, the way to go. Get that installed. Um, and again, in my experience, Go tends to be pretty quick with stuff. So I'm mostly going to be down to the internet speed here, which is pretty good. Um, for folks living in Southeast Asia, I think you probably know that you're lucky that internet speeds in Southeast Asia tend to be pretty awesome. And hi to the person watching. Thanks for joining. You get to watch me stumble my way through stuff, which I appreciate. All right. I feel like, I don't know, maybe need some elevator music or something for this. Hopefully not like terrible elevator music, but we can do that in the future. Okay, we got Go. Nice. All right. So step one done. Hit the Go versions. And that's working. Sometimes you do have to like reopen your terminal when installing new command line tools and stuff like that. Thankfully, we're okay in that regard. So let's keep on rolling. Okay. So Go mod init. I think we can do that. So um, trying to think. Now, of course, I already created this repository without doing the module initialization. I feel like oftentimes that's not exactly suggested, um, but we'll just do it. We'll just go mod in it like directly, and if we need to move stuff around, we'll move stuff around. Go mod init. Um, Sample pretty well. Um, oh yeah, so this is one thing about Go is that the module path should be generally downloadable. Um, so when we're doing this, we're just going to be gitlab.com. No, gitlab.com. There we go. Subai. Um, Again, hopefully I'm not actually screwing this up. Very well might be. And I might have to redo it. No? The command worked at least, so that's good. And let's go and let's see what the results we got. Okay, which I think we're okay. Module is good. We got a Go version number. I'm gonna call that good. So create Go mod. Again, I'm not going to change this. Like that's good enough for our purposes. And just push this. At this stage of a project, you notice there's no branches here or anything like that for people who are familiar with using Git. Um, that's, I feel like at this stage of a project, that's fine. You're not going to be uh, like doing anything like fancy or anything like that. Um, so just like, pushing straight to main. This code isn't getting deployed anywhere. There's no packaging or anything involved. So just we're doing it live, which is fine because live is just a Git repository with nothing really in it. Okay, but so importantly though, we have our project. We've initialized our Go project, which has like nothing there because there is nothing there. So all right, all good. And while we're at it, so I mentioned, well, we probably will kind of change this up at some point. We may want to kind of shift gears a little bit. There's going to be like a front end too. Well, we'll see. So let's just see if there's anything really left to do. Uh, I got an idea. With just a simple thing. You know, Whenever you're kind of starting and getting going, it's just, in my opinion, just a matter of making sure that things work. So you kind of just want to continuously make sure stuff is working. And a very simple way to do that is just to take the example code, um, paste it, run it, see if it works. This code will go away and die eventually, but that's fine. Um, it doesn't really need to do anything other than that. So yes, going that we're going to run the package main, that's special meeting in Go. So when you do stuff like use Go run, it's going to run the main package. Okay, it works, sweet. Although what I will probably do is rather than calling this hello.go, let's call it Hanuman.go. After all, we're calling it Hanuman, also might as well stick with that. Again, see if it works. Indeed, it does. Okay, easy enough. We'll call it help. We'll do something slightly different here. Um, Actually, um, even better than Hanuman. Since we're doing Thai here, Thai name. Um, Moving my Thai dictionary out quick. Don't need Thai properties. Thai dictionary. Just make sure of my spelling here. So, oh, oh no, oh no, oh no. Okay. So yeah, for those who don't know, I do speak Thai like decently. Not by any means an expert, like a kid, but um, we might as well use the UTF-8 functionality here since we got it. So, uh, um, where possible, I try to like type things out rather than copy paste. In my opinion, it's like a little bit better way to do stuff rather than this is basic spelling. There we go. Hanuman. Hello, Hanuman. Cool. Save that. Let's do one last run through and we'll do this. Hey, okay, sweet. It works. Go supports UTF-8. Uh, my terminal does too, so it actually prints. Good times. Great Hanuman.co. And ooh, yeah. Create main package. Boom. And we have a main package that while it does something, it again is the typical Hello World. Um, it doesn't really do anything anything important at this point. So that's fine. Filtering Go. Yeah, this is a there's a bunch of Go type checking tools and stuff. I'm pretty sure I just don't have this configured at the moment, so I'm not going to really worry about that. Okay. Okay, so now we need to actually start making some decisions. I kind of like, this is when I'm at the start of a project. I tend to kind of flip flop on which way I want to go. Uh, Ironically, on which direction I want to choose. Maybe that's the better choice of words in this context. So let's do this. I'm not super into the idea of trolling Go packages. I can, we got, off the top of my head, I can think of some things we do. Obviously, if we're going to be like querying data, we do need, this, we're going to run this as a web service or remotely somehow so that um, those data sources, whatever they are, can be accessible. So we probably want to use a web server package. There's a bunch of those in GoLand. We could do that, um, kind of start doing that. Um, I think though, before I do it, let's also um, just initialize like a normal kind of web project here. And again, we have like the absolutely insane number of choices for how we could do this. Could do like React or something like that. Um, could do like a Svelte kit. Um, so let's kind of shift gears for just a moment. Let's kind of work that out. Okay, so um, front end framework 2025. So, and this is what I would suggest. Really, when you're making technology choices, there really is never, I'd say, like probably a right answer. Um, I feel like the default of today tends to be React. You know, if you rewind about like 5 to 10 years, it was probably Angular. And typically I'd say most React these days are going to be like it's probably a Next.js project. Next.js just being one kind of distribution of React, and Next.js is pretty powerful in a lot of ways. It has like a kind of a back end component and a front end component to it. Uh, with this, we've already chosen our back end. Our back end is going to be in Go. Uh, that just kind of makes life easier for interfacing with Grafana plugins if we would like to. So, Generic Fiber. It's actually a good question. I'm not familiar with Gin or Fiber. But I'm assuming these are front end friendly, so let me check it out. Gin. Oh, Gin Web Framework. Oh, no, okay, this is a Golang one. Um, I'm liking Gin already, just based on the name. So I appreciate that. Um, let's see. Let me just. We're shifting gears yet again because of the chat. So you can thank the chat for this one. Um, okay, Pictures of Martini. Like I've actually worked a little bit with Martini, which is, if memory serves, Martini is pretty minimal in like its syntax, which I like. So let's check the introduction. Um, and again, we're just kind of trying to get a concept of what might work relative to other stuff. And again, there's at the end of the day, there's no real right answer. I tend to look at just what is the ease of coding with it, how extensible is it. Just basically, am I going to, what is the consequence of this going to be if I, for whatever reason, am maintaining this 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, will I have regretted that decision? And so let's take a look. I will say this: this is pretty similar to, I'd say, a lot of back end stuff. Uh, Pretty easy, actually. Actually, I like this. This is a pretty straightforward syntax, which is always, in my opinion, good news. Um, I'm kind of curious about um, um, kind of the middleware and stuff like that. So middleware being just what we would use to like inject functionality into routes, inject functionality into the web server itself. That tends to be where things I feel like get tricked up. And this looks not too bad. So the one other thing I'm gonna look at is we don't necessarily want to go like the way everyone is going. Oh my God. But like a number of stars like could be indicative of how much support you'll get, and also just like is the project active. So there's just 82K is a bunch. The project was last committed to 8 hours ago. So Jim looking pretty good, but let's check out Fiverr too. Going Fiverr. Also looking pretty good. I do like the guide here is pretty nice. Off the top of my head, I'm saying that this is looking like the lift might be a little bit more than Jim, like relatively speaking. Um, but it's not too bad. Um, and so you'll see this. This is, I feel like, a very common pattern in Go, which the underlying HTTP stuff, the connection stuff provides a connection context. And at some level, I feel like most Go web frameworks kind of build upon that in some fashion or create an API that's very similar, which is fine. So there's kind of some broad patterns in the Go web frameworks. So let's see here. And again, okay, so Fiber still, I mean, still extremely popular, uh, if not as much. I'm kind of on the fence here. It's early stage though. So I feel like we're not going to really shoot ourselves in the foot too much. Both projects are pretty popular. Both have recent commits. Uh, man, this is always a fun one. Are we switching between major versions? Um, Major versions, while good, is a good sign, can also be a headache too. Uh, Usually, like once a major version has been released, the older version will kind of go out of favor. And so it's something to take into consideration. So let's check out. This is something I'm going to look at and just understand quickly about Jim. Is are they in the midst of doing a major new version? At least from what I can tell. I'm going to say probably not. Um, so this is always a tricky one. I'm going to say for the sake of sanity here, and just given the timing, like if I were to be revisiting this like a few months from now, I would probably just go ahead and I'd probably give Fiber a closer look once that V3 is released. But given that it's not out yet, and given that there could be like major API changes, I'm just going to go with Gen for now. Easy enough. So we're just going to, yeah, we're going to just import this directly follow the basic path back here. And Sharif, I just want to thank you for throwing out the suggestion out there. Again, I think as I've said, um, this is just like uh, a train wreck. But thank you for helping keep us on track. Okay, so let's do it quick, uh, and then we'll switch gears over to front end quick. So we're gonna switch the import net HTTP and boom, yeah, get the GitHub import in there. Not going to be needing format anymore. And again, this is trying to avoid copy pasting um, where possible. So I'm just going to be like switching back and forth here a little bit. Outside of there. Default. Okay. On Git. I'm fine doing the thing. And again, there's really, I think, no shame in just doing the example code. The reason we type it out though is just to get a sense of how it actually feels like to program with this rather than just copy pasting. Copy pasting only gives us some sense of how difficult it's going to be in the end. So, um, that's there. Just using the inline function here. JSON. Okay. Yep, HTTP that status okay. And again, really nothing wrong with leaning on documentation or anything like that. Save, in my opinion, it's best to save your memory for, yeah, the memory up here for like kind of higher level architectural things or things that you're going to be like doing really repetitively. Um, Stuff that, yeah, you're not like once you do like an HTTP handler, you kind of tend to put it away and then just not touch it for ages. So uh, there's just not too much value in spending time memorizing this stuff, especially these days. If we rewind 5 to 10 years ago, the documentation tends to be terrible. But these days, documentation in this stuff tends to be not too bad. So um, let's just go ahead and do this. Or let's run. So, and again, because of how Go works, when we just do the Go run, it should just automatically download and import these things. Let's see. All right, it's going to make us go get it. All right, well, let's go get it. Easy enough. Actually, the terminal is helping me here, so we just hit tab. That's fine. Again, you know, it's good to be strategic and smart, but it's also good to just let the tools, be smart for you as well. Don't waste cycles on doing things that aren't going to end up like mattering too much. The more we are able to focus on the high level architecture, how things fit together, the better off we're going to be. All right. I'm suspecting this will work now. Going to be a little longer compile time. Okay, but still not bad. And then we'll just go over to local host 8080/10. Hey, I'm using Firefox, so we just get a message right back. Paul, and sure enough, again, thank you for the suggestion. Oh man, Chara. I'm gonna have to look up your name, man, and make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. So my apologies if I'm not. But yeah, no, thank you for that. That's an awesome thing, and thank you for. You're technically now the first contributor to this project outside of me, so appreciate it. I will. I'll put the contributors down, um, and if nothing else, I'll throw your name in there. So okay. So now we got the Go mod file. Now has a bunch of dependencies in it. Thanks to Go Get. The sum is basically just going to contain the specific versions of all these. We're all good. We're running now. So let's get everything here. Use Gene framework and basic. Okay. Basic. Let's say test handler and commit it and push it. So now we have a project that actually does something, which is nice. Um, Always good to have a little something working. Okay, so our choice has been made. Uh, we got the gin martini, and so we're off and running. Yeah, sure. So I talked about it a little bit when I started streaming. The idea here is to get something that is Grafana compatible, roughly speaking. So an observability system, but kind of a little bit slimmer, and also dealing with some of the um, kind of the issues that Grafana would have. And this is like things like um, having a query library. So we're going to be able to kind of set up and configure queries for different data sources in kind of a global way. In Grafana, the way that works is kind of in a dashboard-centric fashion. Um, and I will probably step through some of how that works with Grafana specifically in a later bit. Right now, I'm just kind of getting this set up and running at the moment. The other portion is, and kind of one of the main things for me is that when you configure queries in Grafana, they're actually sent from the front end to the back end. And so if you have an SQL query, it can actually be intercepted on the front end and sent to the back end, which is potentially like a pretty big security issue. So we don't necessarily want users to be able to modify the queries that we have set up, but rather just have a query configured somewhere on the back end that can then be run. The reason for doing this is, let's say we give access to a database and someone realizes that there aren't exactly strict permissions on that database. Um, then if Grafana is set up, they could potentially start querying for all kinds of things. This is, in part, and, I wouldn't say this is a criticism. That's just how Grafana works. Once there are pluses and minuses to that approach. But with this approach, we're just going to kind of take a little bit different path, just making things a little bit more locked down, essentially. So yeah, and that's kind of what we're going with. The other thing is that the front end for the font is like quite quite complex. Um, Having worked with it, um, so we're going to create a front end that's probably like a little bit more straightforward to work with, and has some tools that would make it a little bit easier to contribute for something like this. And again, we're not targeting feature compatibility. We're targeting use cases and things in the observability space that other tools don't do. Um, Hopefully, we can target compatibility with Grafana data source plugins, so that way, if people want to use Grafana data sources, they can. But otherwise, we're not going to worry about it. So in the same vein of observability tools, but not something too bad. It's also something that's uh, in the end we're going to get something very visual. That is not like a crazy heavy lift to get from nothing to something. That is also something that is just non-trivial. So we want to get something that's like non-trivial. Um, so we're actually like something interesting, but also not like impossible to obtain, super long amount of time. So we'll see how it goes. And again, this is something. Part of the reason I'm selecting this is I just have a bunch of experience in this space, so that makes life easier as well. Okay, no, thank you for the questions. I was not expecting to have any viewers for this first one, so having any is nice. And I'll actually probably go back and fill in the README with some of that information later. So this is really tight things using the Grafana protocol. Actually, here, I'll just do it. So um, goals. Um, Query to query creation with queries being run from the backend. Um, any front end code. And again, like this is just kind of difference in how these systems would work. That's not necessarily a bad thing with how Grafana works, but it does make it so that in certain contexts it's just not useful. And slimmer, uh, slim performant front end. Grafana is pretty heavy, um, which is fine. But again, we're kind of targeting different use cases here. I think when it comes to like software, it makes sense to do things that are in like different niches, so we can fill out different niches that other software can't necessarily fill. The Grafana front end is just massive. And there's all kinds of tools in there, um, but because of that, it makes it like not necessarily usable in every context. Like if we have users that are on slow connections, unfortunately, like Grafana is not going to be the best choice. Um, it just it simply is. We're not going to be able to download 10 plus megabytes of JavaScript on a slow connection and hope to get something useful out of it. This is kind of, it is what it is. And there, again, I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. Um, you know, Grafana is super popular, and so if that were a problem in every context, it wouldn't get used. So, and I think that we're learning and having fun. Why not? Um, And I think as with anything, these any piece of software is going to evolve. Um, this one, we might throw all this out. We might totally pivot to something else. But for now, I think this is good. Update, reading, goals, observability type things. Um, I will make this make more sense as time goes on. uh, but I think this is pretty indicative of how a lot of projects start. You're just kind of scratching um, personal itches and then going from there. Um, and I feel like at the beginning, it's just um, in someone's head. In this case, it would just be in my head. And so it's kind of like a mess as it comes out. But normally, like you're not going to have, like, this is just going to be done on your own. You wouldn't even be talking to anyone. So um, it's okay. Um, you know, this is just, showing like how the sausage is made. It's not always that clean, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's, yeah, it starts as kind of a rough stone, and we polish it up as time goes. Okay, so we have a backend. It doesn't really do much of anything at the moment, other than we have one route thing that just responds with Pong, and that's it. Um, Very simple so far. So now and shift back to where I was jumping into, which is front-end frameworks. So we're going to be querying data somehow on the back end, and then we're going to want some way to display it. So, and kind of what I was talking about earlier, and if we're just jumping around like crazy, is that um, the kind of the default go-to, I feel like at this point is probably something React related, um, especially like Next.js. Next.js has a lot of mind share. The thing with like Next.js is you can use it just strictly as a front end system. There's also a whole backend component to Next.js, so you can use Next.js as your backend system as well. For something along the lines of this, that's probably not the greatest thing in the world. JS as a backend is not super fast. The memory usage would be quite high, which would prevent us from querying large data sets potentially. So we'll probably like skip over Next.js. I feel like, this is just kind of my opinion, is that where we are in kind of the front end space at the moment is like React of today is approximately where Angular was 5 to 10 years ago. The ideas of React have become pretty ubiquitous in terms of web development, but it's kind of starting also to show its age. There are new ideas coming along. Now, granted, the benefit of using React is the tools, the libraries, the stuff like that. There's so many different choices for how we could go about it. I might just, for the sake of ease here, I might just say, no, Next.js is the way to go, because you can do like Next.js completely in a front end manner, and that's very possible. And it comes with a lot of benefits. The build process with Next.js, they put a lot of effort into that, so it's pretty fast. The other kind of benefit too is that it's just hugely popular. Well, let me see. And again, we're kind of going to go through here what we did with like Gin and Fiber just a bit ago. Just look at kind of different options. Um, Now, if I had to guess, the um, on GitHub, I think this is just there's going to be like, yeah, there's just 132K stars, 28K forks. Um, Next.js is just crazy, crazy popular, and the activity levels just through the roof. Um, we might end up just choosing Next.js just for the sake of easiness here. Um, the other kind of thing um, that could tip the scales for me personally is that Next.js is like I'm very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with React development in general. So that might make life a bit easier. But for the sake of arguing here, let's also take a look at Svelte. And Svelte compares to React. If we want to like choose the Next.js, the kind of corresponding project would be SvelteKit. And just as a quick thing, I want to just see, okay, again, crazy popular Svelte. I feel like this is just one of those things where, to a certain degree, kind of comes down. I feel like down just to preference a little bit. Um, do you want to have a certain syntax? Do you want to have another syntax? And I think kind of the main thing here we're going to be looking at. So other than the stars, I mean 20,000 is still good. There's obviously support behind it. The last SvelteKit commit was 3 days ago. That's not bad at all. Svelte itself 15 hours ago. I don't need to look at React or Next.js. I know those are under very active development. So I'll leave that um, as an exercise for the viewer. Um, but the um, again, I think there's really kind of no right choice. So I think what I'm going to be doing though is actually more uh, around a couple of things. Is one, we are going to be displaying data, so um, charts, stuff like that. Um, so kind of deciding, from the perspective of how easily can we put embed different types of visualizations into this. I think that's going to be kind of the main thing that we're curious about here. So, excuse me. So, no, that's not what we're trying to do. Yeah, D3 is fine. Um, it tends to be a little slow. So D3 is an SVG based charting library. Um, That's interesting. Um, Basically, like this post is suggesting that it really wouldn't matter if we have a wrapper library. We can just use something like eCharts. I feel like in the end we probably will use eCharts just because for those not familiar in the charting space, eCharts has like pretty much everything I think you could want in terms of charts. And it's also like very fast. It can visualize a lot of data. And yeah, it looks pretty good. So this is nice. Um, okay. So it kind of makes things easier to a degree. Um, for maps, I highly doubt we actually would use maps. These are more kind of specific, like things to set up. Kind of creating a general visualization tool. So that is not something we're super curious about. But oh my God, yeah, just the number of chart types available in eCharts is actually really impressive. Okay, that's that does not instill confidence at all. Um, let's see where so eCharts 5.6. Yeah, I think so. Kind of maybe our choice of front end in a lot of ways is going to be predicated upon how easy it is to use charts, which again I think is just fun. So we always want to target like ask ourselves what's like the most straightforward way um, to work with things. What's going to get us um, what we want. Yeah, this website's for some reason the example site's working kind of funky for me, and I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. Um, I'm just going to assume that's because I have a tendency to scroll around really fast, and I seem to be just like overloading stuff a bit. But okay, we have basically everything we need here, so we'll just go ahead and say that everything was eCharts. So eCharts. Well, let's just check that out. We have a fairly active wrapper here. Okay, that's looking good. That's definitely confidence instilling. Um, eCharts for React. I don't know if this is the main one used. So the Svelte eCharts is definitely has quite a bit less usage. Um, Interestingly, the eCharts for React is not seeing much development, which is that might be a bit of a red flag. So this is kind of what our choice is coming down to eCharts for uh, React. React eCharts. There's another one here. Okay. And so we're not really, this is the eChart SSR would be server-side rendering of the charts. I wouldn't really worry too much about server-side rendering. Um, one thing we probably do want to have, like in the future, is the ability to render charts on various platforms. So other than just web. And if we kind of go the server-side rendering route, it would just kind of complicate things. Always a possibility to like take something and like have some kind of pre-rendering in Go or something like that. I think one of the big reasons a lot of these things are using Next.js or SvelteKit are popular is you can do that server-side rendering with stuff like charts and stuff like that. But that just kind of makes things complicated. Sure. What I'm seeing as well is that regardless of which way we go, we may end up creating our own component in the out to do this. Actually, not getting too much information here. Um, so yeah, I'm familiar with charting libraries. It just kind of makes this easier. Each charts is performance, and there's a bunch of chart types, so we're kind of going that way. As to like how we want to use this, and I'd say it's kind of a toss-up, which makes the choice like a little bit difficult. And it's we don't want to go like too far down the rabbit hole of choosing a framework that we're just going to blow up in the future. Um, so um, it's a good question of what exactly we want to do here. Um, I'm on the fence about this at the moment. So when you're on the fence, I'd say just a little more research. Svelte. Let's look. There always might be another library. Apex charts. This is, I think, just going to be another charting library. Interesting. Mm, this, I think this is not open source. Omega? Weird. It's not often that you just like see a project and just like download stuff. Okay, it is open source. They just kind of hit it. Okay, well, this is helpful. Um, Let me look. So this might be worth looking into. And these are actually decent looking. Um, heat maps, for area radar charts, scatter plots. Next. Um, no, that's cool. It can do mixed charts. That's uh, a bit unusual. Um, Columns, stacked columns, dynamic related charts. Um, so I'm just gonna say, like, it seems like off the top of my head, just the the chart integration with Svelte may not be the best at the moment, and so it probably is just more straightforward simply to go with React. Tree maps are also good. They can be really useful. Pie chart's not super useful, but pretty much everyone wants a pie chart. I feel like that's just seems to be the way of the world. People like looking at pie charts. So okay, let's just do this then. We'll go with Next.js for the moment. Um, Really, I think what the decision is coming down to at this point is just slightly better charting support overall in Next.js. We may come to regret this decision. Time time will tell on that one. So, but just in general, I feel like the development experience overall on Next.js is pretty good. Um, it has built-in routing. A lot of the styling stuff, fonts, CSS, things like that are pretty good overall. Uh, we're only using the front end portion. We're not going to be using any of the server portion of Next.js. That can, at certain times, make life a little hard since when you're working with Next.js, it will want to do a server-side render, but if you aren't using that at all, it's just not going to work. Um, a little bit of complication there, but overall, I think what you get from using Next.js relative um, to just kind of going in plain is like pretty good for the most part. So we'll do that. Um, so we're just gonna do um, npx create next up. I might get this wrong. I think it should install into the, okay, that's what I was worried about. Um, so we're going to do this way. The reason being is we already, well, let me see this. I might be able to actually just go up a directory and install next that way. Using an installer is generally a bit more preferable to trying to do things by hand. I don't know. Yeah, okay. So it's not liking that we did the Go stuff before, so we will just do the manual install instead. Um, I'm okay like copying, pasting, install commands is fine, just as long as you understand what they do. You can end up installing malware and stuff like that on your computer if you're not careful with something like this, but uh, that's easy enough. We're just installing Next, React, and React DOM, so I think we'll be fine. I think this will enter the package.json. Um, yeah, let's make sure though. Yep, got a package.json. Cool, easy enough. Um, for those of you who are familiar with JavaScript, the package.json is just a pretty simple. It's what you're going to get in like any JavaScript project these days using npm or anything like that. Okay, there we go. So we got the dependencies installed. So I'm going to go through that. Okay, and again, um, when we're doing code, trying not to just straight up copy paste layout tsx. Okay, it's TypeScript at this point. Export the default function layout. Um, TypeScript can be a bit of a pain, but it also can save you from yourself. Again, there was a TypeScript's got up and downs, I'd say. Um, We don't want that there. There we go. Children. Yeah. Recommend, I think. Using something like Next.js is definitely, in my opinion, preferable to rolling your own. Uh, you can use also something like Create React App, um, but basically, um, there's a lot of like details that React by default doesn't handle when you're doing development. So using something like Next.js or something else is, I think it helps a lot. Putting a language tag in there, which might be questionable, but we'll just go with it. Something tells me that's something we're going to need to change later. Okay. So we might need to do that to get React types. That's fine. Um, Next.js, there's a lot of things uh, in React that normally you would need to do with React, like importing React into files and stuff. Next.js will do this automatically. For now, my editor is not liking it because usually you need to also configure the editor to make sure it's aware of these things. But in all likelihood, at the moment, there is no problem. So we're good here. Okay. Page.tsx. So export default function page. For anyone who's used React, this is pretty much just straight up normal React stuff. Again, I'm not going to do hello Next.js. We'll do hello Hanuman, which is going to be hilarious. We don't actually, this isn't actually English. We're using non-English characters here too. So that might throw things into a tizzy a little bit, but that's okay. Life will go on. Uh, and yes, I need to look at my spelling again because, again, always worth doing. And when doing things, when spelling them out, close all these tabs here. Going to bring up its own dictionary again. Again, I'm like a kid with the language, so it behooves me when you're like a kid. Going to resources is never a bad idea. And when it comes to software, we're all children, really. So, no. Um, okay, there we go. Save this. I also closed the next entry as picture. Nice. Bring it back quick. Installation. Okay, I think we're okay. We don't need a public folder. Yeah, I might do that in a second. Take the little logo I have here um, and just drop that in there just to make sure, again, that things are working. Again, we're trying to always test at each stage in a very iterative sense that things are working. All right, let's try this quick. No, tell him, run that. Um, Next.js does a lot of fun things for you. It automatically creates a tsconfig.json, um, installs dependencies, and does a bunch of other stuff for you. again, using something like Next.js is definitely helpful. The JavaScript ecosystem is kind of insane. And so having these things that are actively helpful in getting you off the ground uh, can really make a difference. Hey, hello Hanuman, it works, yay. And we got a little next thing. This is just like injected by the dev server. So we have a specific way to run development stuff now. We have a front end that works technically. We have a back end that also technically works. So we'll start to put those together in just a second here. Okay, but that is not bad. We're off to a decent start here. So not a complete train wreck, at least not yet. Okay, so here's some things we got to do before we start committing like crazy. We don't have a .git ignore. The .git ignore is so that certain things are not committed to Git that we do not want there. So .git ignore .next. So next.js files. The git ignore anything that starts with a hash mark with the comments. Java. JavaScript madness, yeah. Maybe not madness, JavaScript. Something. Go back to there. Node modules. We definitely don't want to do node modules. These are our JS dependencies. Sanity. I don't know. Even that feels. Um, Weight of death. Yeah, we don't want the weight of death to be in our repository. Um, those are just things that are just going to drive us insane. Okay, so um, let's go back here. Okay, good. We now have a list of untracked changes. That's not insane. Add the dot get ignore. Avoid node module craziness. Now we'll just call it craziness. We'll not here now. We'll just stick with weight of death. Yeah. Okay. And these are just Next.js things. So, um, add basic Next.js installation. Okay. That. So we'll push these. Nice. Okay. Um, we have things that are working, which is great. So moving on. One thing I want to do, and this is just from experience in working with Next.js. So if you are working for with a Next.js project, and it is going to be just a front end project. So we're not using any of the back end components of Next.js. We need to do we need to do exporting. Where is this? Oh, good lord, it's somewhere in this page. Um, and we'll get the absolute import paths too, because these make life a lot easier. Um, Generally speaking, I think it's better in most situations to use absolute imports. They can be a total pain in the ass sometimes, um, but in general, we want to make our life easier, um, and absolute imports are a way to do that. But we'll get there. So the other thing we want to make sure of is the exporting. So when working with a Next project on the front end, you're going to be doing what's called exporting. And what that does is that just wraps up your next application, essentially, your Next.js project, into something that which can be used by like a normal web server just into essentially your front end. So we want to do npm. We're going to just create a script for this and export. This is going to be two commands actually. Next build, next export. So it's really two steps. And the reason we're doing this is when you're exporting, you need to build the project first. So that build gets us halfway. So if we do npm run build, okay. So now we have our build. And what you'll see is that with the build, it basically goes into this .next folder. This is something, yeah, I mean, it works. But okay, so then we want to do npm run export. So that'll do the build. Oh, actually, oh dang, it's gone. Deploying static exports. So I've mostly been working on older versions of Next.js. So okay. So yeah, I mean, this is exactly explains what the export does. Just the method, we're kind of in a little easier position here though. We want to break out into individual HTML files and all that for different routes and stuff. Again, this makes things faster. But we'll just be, instead of doing export, all right, we can get rid of this. This makes life easier. Instead, we will be creating a next.config.js, which I don't believe was created. Config.js. Okay, let's just make this easier. So again, avoiding just copying and pasting blindly wherever possible. Const next config. This is just an object. Output export. Module.exports. So this would be the really compiler options essentially for Next.js. So rather than doing the ES6 import export style, we're doing the kind of the old Node style, Node.js style. Well, we'll see. Probably won't give us problems, but we'll see. This is a JS file, but we're just doing type hinting here. Next. Config. ID's fighting with a little bit. My editors. So we should just be able to do next build. So I think we're okay. I don't know. Okay, yeah. So it did work. When you do a static export like this, you get this out directory. Again, the reason we're testing this is we're going to want to put this in the git ignore because this is a build artifact. So out, add that too. Okay. Configure static exports. Huh. And yes, we can, I'm bidding prompt to install extension for uh, the gitignore file. All right, now we have also syntax highlighting for the gitignore. All right, cool. I think that's probably like a good place to stop this. Just kind of recapping what we've done. Um, we have a basic backend written in Go. It currently is doing pretty much nothing other than we have one route of ping. All it does is it responds with JSON with a dictionary of message long. That's it. We also have a front end built with Next.js. We get a basic layout with a basic page that just has a heading that says "Hello Hanuman" and Hanuman written in Thai. So we're breaking the language barriers there with the HTML, but life will go on. And we've kind of defined, generally speaking, what we're trying to do, which is just build like kind of a charting observability tool in the realm of Grafana, but not exactly the same. We're not going to be targeting nearly the features that Grafana has, but just trying to do something that will, in the end, be hopefully compatible with Grafana data source plugins, so we can use Grafana type data sources in this system if we would like to. But yeah, not getting anywhere near features, and we decided to go with Next.js um, simply because at the moment it appears that it's easier to use, kind of like React, for a lot of the charting capabilities that are out there at the moment. So um, could just be this could be like a minor like foot gun. Are we shooting ourselves in the foot? Is React really in the position that Angular was in a few years ago? Maybe. It's always a possibility. So we're going to be taking a little risk there. Um, we'll probably want to have some. I am going to actually put this in the README risks. Is React where Angular was 5 to 10 years ago. So, excuse me. And so we probably do want to consider some kind of escape hatch um, for for React. Um, Essentially, not investing too much into the front end and considering different options, but we'll leave that as a future exercise. But so we have a front end, we have a back end. We've not integrated them together, but we will be doing so fairly soon. So in any case, I think that's the first live stream. I want to thank Cherith again for dropping in, saying hi. We actually have our first outside contributor on our first live stream, which is cool. So thank you for the suggestion for Jin. I think Jin will actually turn out pretty well. It is the kind of the popular option it's seen at the moment. But let me just get this committed. I'll talk about risks. Okay, and get that pushed out. There it is. Um, Thank you for those who dropped by. And I'll be doing more of these, probably at least a few times a week. And we'll keep going, keep building this out. Thanks. See you guys. Have a good one. Bye bye.